It's just gonna happen.
Okay, cool. You're gonna have a little bit of reverb in here.
On television or like on YouTube?
Wherever. I don't know. But there's something about that microphone. So.
As far as I know, the reverb is only going to come through on the Zoom thing. So you'll only be able to hear, I don't think you'll be able to hear the reverb in the room unless you do, in which case there's nothing I could do. But it'll be fine.
We can handle it. Okay. Besides, you're hanging today.
Yeah, we got this.
Yeah. Hey. Hey, if I get really quiet, it means you're going.
Just a, so,
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be high in the middle, so the second part. It's
Do
gonna
it. Do it. You'll sing it then. I'm gonna start with Inigo just to
Yeah, I know.
warm up my
Yeah, you
little
did
throat.
it. Seven. Lisa and Stan.
Wait, 2, 4, 6, 7.
That's 9.
What could I do? 1 minute to go. Do you know Bob's Tully is from the same person that did my Tully? Did not? Excuse me, I just want to point out there is no mechitza in the middle. You can mix. That is true. Okay then.
There we go. There's our one.
Yes. I'll make the announcement.
The door's not open.
Good. That's okay. Totally cool. But are you okay that everyone else is mask optional? Okay, that's what I figured. Okay. Right. So it is 10 o'clock a.m., so I think we're ready to start. There we go. Shabbat Shalom to those that are present with us in the chapel where we've not been in quite some time. Shabbat Shalom to those that might be popping on to Zoom to meet with us, and those that are on YouTube. Rick Abrams is my accompanist, associate, great partner up here in leading services, so I welcome him. And Rabbi Katz is not absent today, but he's going to do our Devar today. So he gets to be, as we sometimes so kindly call it, a Jew in the pew for a change, and that I think is kind of fun for him too. So we'll begin this morning with a nigun, so take a nice deep breath in. It's still a little crisp on the air outside, although yesterday was glorious. It was just beyond, oh my God, spring's here? Nah, not yet, but getting close. So take a nice deep breath in. It is Shabbat. We do get to rest today. We do get to be on a much slower pace today if we choose. And we'll start with the nigun to kind of warm you up a teeny bit. Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da 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 ya da 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 da. Yai da da. Yai da da da. Yai da da ya da 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 da. We'll begin our service this morning on page 172. Let's open those tents. Let's bring everyone in.
Tovu Ohalecha Yaakov Ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael Tovu Ohalecha Yaakov Ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael, V'ani berov chastecha avo v'etzecha eshtachaveh elecha kodshecha
Move ahead to page 174. The soul that you have given me, O God, is pure. Elohai nishama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai nishama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai, Elohai, neshama shenatata bi tehora, tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Page 175, Nisim B'chol Yom. We do have these daily miracles. When we're leading or in part a bar bat mitzvah, we don't use the traditional ones, but when we gather together in the chapel, we always do, and you guys can be in full force. So we've got to hear you so they can hear us on Zoom. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lesefivina le'achin ben yom uvein laila.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivri.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kefufi.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, roka haaretz al hamayim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei gaveh.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten le'yahiv kol.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavir sheinai me'enai utenu mame afapai.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani b'tzelem Elohim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani bat korim.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shasani Yisrael.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'gvura.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifara.
We join together in the last one. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Adonai, our God, make the words of your Torah sweet to us and to the house of Israel, your people, and that we and our children may be lovers of your name and students of your Torah. We praise you, O God, teacher of Torah to our people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed Torah le'amu Yisrael. Page 180. Elu divarim she'en lahem shior, shadam kochel perotehem ba'olam hazeh, ve'hakeren kayemet lo le'olam haba, ve'elu hen kibud avaim ugmilut chasadim, ve'hashkamat beit hamidrash shacharit ve'arvit, V'haknasat orchim uvikur cholim, v'haknasat kala uvayat hamet v'yun tefillah, v'hava'at shalom ben adam lachavero, v'tamud Torah kineged kulam. Move ahead to page 183. Baruch Shamar v'haya olam,
Baruch Hu,
Baruch Oser v'reshit,
Baruch Omer ve'oseh,
Baruch Oser u'mekayem,
Baruch merachem al haaretz,
Baruch merachem al habriot,
Baruch mishalem v'hatov l'ireyah,
Baruch La'ad v'kayam lanetzach.
Baruch podeh u'matzil, Baruch Shemo.
Blessed are you, Adonai, sovereign, who's glorified through praise. Baruch atah Adonai, melech mechula batishbachot. We turn to page 184, Psalm 92, for Shabbat.
Mizmor shir liyom
Shabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Lehagid מבקר חסדך ואמונתך מלא
עלי אסור ועלי נבל עלי
היגיון וכינור מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון כי שימחתני אדוני בפעלך במעשה ידך ארנן
מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני מאוד
עמקו מחשבותיך מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון אשרי ביתך עוד יהלוך סלע
אשרי שכך לו אשרי העם שאדוני אלוהיו
תהילה לדוד ארוממך אלוהי המלך ועברך שמך לעולם ועד
בכל יום אברכך והללה שמך לעולם ועד
גדול אדוני ומכולם מאוד ולגדולתו אין חקר
דור לדור ישבח מעשיך וגבורותיך יגידו
הדר כבוד הודיך ודברי נפלאותיך עשיך
ועזוז נורותיך יאמרו וגדלתך אספרנה
זכר רב טובך יביאו וצדקותך ירננו
חנון ורחום אדוני ערך אפיים וחסד
טוב אדוני לכל ורחמיו על כל מעשיו
ירדוך אדוני כל מעשיך וחסידיך יברכוך
כבוד מלכותך יאמרו וגבורתך ידברו
להודיע לבני אדם גבורותיו וכבוד הדר מלכותו
מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור
סומך אדוני לכל הנופלים וזוקף לכל הכפופים
עיניך אליך יסברו ואתה נותן להם את אוכלם בעיתו
פותח את ידיך ומשפיע לכל חי רצון
צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו וחסיד בכל מעשיו
קרוב אדוני לכל קורב לכל אשר יקראו ואמן
רצון יראיו יעשה ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם
שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו ואת כל הרשעים ישמיע
תהילת אדוני ידבר פי ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד
ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם הללויה
page 188 Hallelujah. 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 El Bekocho. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Bekia Uzo. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
to page 194. If you are able, please rise. If we don't see you rising, I know that you're rising internally, and you are with us. Yitgadav, Yitgadav, Shemei Rabbah. Yamadi Vrachirute, Vyamlich Malchute, B'chayechonu, Vyamechonu, V'chayedecho, Beit Yisrael. B'hagala u'vizman kariv, V'yemeru. Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorah, Le'olam u'lamei. Yitbarak v'yishabak v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnasei, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalel shemei dekudashah. Le'la min kol berchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechamata, damiran b'alama v'yemeru. Amen. Am I awake? Am I prepared?
Are you listening to my prayer?
Can you hear my voice?
Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Le'olam ba'ed. Le'olam ba'ed.
Yadadai-dai-dai, yadadai-dai-dai, Please be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvarei choshech oseh shalom uvarei et hakol. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam or uvarei
Choshech oseh shalom uvarei et hakol. Oseh shalom uvarei et hakol.
Page 196.
The world is sunlight, restoring the soul, rejoicing the heart, bringing light to the eyes, more welcome than gold, a Torah from heaven. I have no light to give this morning. My Torah, my special human gift, is words. As I bring my words forth from silence, welcome them, you who redeems the sun from the darkness.
Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hameorot. Page 198.
Hava Rabbah Avtanu Adonai Eloheinu Chemla Gedola V'Tera Chamata Aleinu Ba'avor Avoteinu Ve'imotenu Shebatchu V'cha Shebatchu V'cha Shebatchu V'cha V'tilamden Chukechai Kein Tichonenu Tilamdenu Arachem Rachem Aleinu Amrachem Rachem Aleinu V'tein b'libenu lehavin Lehavin u'haskil lishmoa Lilmod
Yeshuotecha.
V'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanafot ha'aretz v'torachenu k'miyot l'aratzenu ki el poel Yeshuot ata uvanu v'charta v'kiraftanu l'shimcha gadol selah be'emet lo dot l'cha ol yachetcha b'ahava Baruch ata Adonai habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shiftecha b'vetecha uv'lechtecha v'adarech uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uktavtam amezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. Page 202. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor daber el bnei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem ve'asu lahem tzitzit al kanfei vigdehem l'doratam v'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf b'til t'chelet ve'haya lachem l'tzitzit uritem oto uzchartem et kol mitzvot Adonai ve'asitem otam v'lo taturu acharei levavchem ve'acharei enechem asher atem zonim achareihem leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim l'Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti atchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liyot lachem l'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. Page 203, please join us. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace.
La 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 la.
rise once more. Sur Yisrael, Kuma Be'ezrat Yisrael, Uvdei V'numecha, Yehuda V'Yisrael. Go Aleinu, Adonai Tzivot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love, open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Adonai Sifatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu v'Imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hadibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevi Gevurah Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol Atah Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach, U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed, Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Nofrim V'Rofei Cholim, U'Matir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato L'Shenei Afar, Mi Chamocha Ba'al Gevurot, U'Mido Melech, Melech Mebit U'Mechayeh, U'Matzliach Yeshua, V'Ne'eman Atala HaChayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol. Nekadesh et Shimcha ba'olam, Keshem shemakdishim oto b'shmei maro, Kakatuv ayad nevi'echa, V'kara zeh zeh ve'amar,
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Melech haaretz, Kevodo.
Adir Adirenu Adonai Adoneinu, Adir Shimcha b'chol haaretz.
Baruch Kivod Adonai Mimkomo.
Echadu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu Vehu Yashmienu, V'rachamav Le'nei Kol Chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai Le'olam, Elohai Yisrael, Ledor Vador. Hallelujah. Ledor Vador Nagid God Laka,
Tzachim Kedushata Latish, B'Shivcha Eloheinu Mi'iminu Lo Yamut Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. We continue silently with the words in the Siddur through page 219, or the words that are in or on your heart. And when you are finished with your prayer, please be seated. Our tradition is to ask of nothing on Shabbat, but the only thing that we do ask for in help to do this is to bring peace. We turn back to page 216, and let's read the bottom section together. O God, may we never become complacent, faltering in our effort to build a world of peace. Let the nations know and understand that justice and right are better than dominion and conquest. May all come to see that it is not by might nor by power, but by your Spirit that life prevails. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu, Yal kol Yisrael amecha. Parcheinu yotzreinu kulanu kiecha, Yor panecha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Kiva or panecha netata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu. Torah chayim v'yavat chesed uv'tzedaka, bracha v'rachamim, chayim v'shalom. Sim shalom, tova uvracha. Sim shalom, uvracha. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael, b'chol ed uv'chol shah b'shlomecha.
sim shalom tova uvracha, sim shalom tova uvracha. Baruch ata Adonai, hamavarech et amo Yisrael, bashalom. So we're at the core of our service, not that what we've done is not valuable. It was valuable. It is valuable. It always adds value to Shabbat, but we get to Seder Kriyat HaTorah Shabbat on page 244, as Rabbi Katz will do a devar, a drash with us this morning. Our chanter this morning is Lisa Lisser, and Stan Keels will be chanting a little smithin of Haftarah as well. So I ask you to rise, and Bob David, can you come up and carry Torah for us today? Ein kemocha va'Elohim Adonai, v'ein kemasecha. Malchutecha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha bechol dor vador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, avarakamim, heitiv avir tzoncha et Zion, tivnei komot Yerushalayim, tivnei komot Yerushalayim. Ki v'cha levad bataknu, melech eram v'nisa, Adon olamim. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Udevar Adonai Merushalayim. Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah, Le'amo Yisrael B'Kdushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadlul Adonai Iti, Uneramema Shemo Yaktav. Yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai dai 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 yadai Thank you very much. Good. Please be seated. Rob, after you want to speak? Yeah, after. Okay, just wasn't sure if you wanted to do a little intro or not. Okay, all right. This morning we're going to be chanting from Leviticus chapter 8 in the Parshat Tzav. Lisa is going to be our chanter, and there's someone that's new to me face-wise in the congregation this morning, and I'd love you to come up and have the aliyah for us. There is a cheat sheet, so come on up. No, it's up. It's up. Aliyah. And your name is? Cool, come on up. Great. All right, cheat sheet, come on over. Okay. Hold on for 1 second. Okay, it's 20 lines down. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh, yeah, great. Yep. Okay. All right, if you want to take my tzitzit and touch the spot, yes, here's the book. Here's the book or tzitzit if you want to turn it on. And then we say telling it. Perfect. Excellent. Okay, here we go. Here's the cheat sheet.
Okay. Baruch et Adonai Hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Don't run away.
Amen. Vayakrev et ha'ayil hasheni el hamiluim. Vayismechu Aharon uvanav et yedehem al rosh ha'ayil. Vayishchat vayikach Moshe midamo vayiten al tanuch ozen Aharon haymanit v'yalbohen yado haymanit v'yalbohen raglo haymanit vayakrev et beno Aharon vayiten Moshe min hadam al tanuch aznam haymanit v'yalbohen yadam haymanit v'yalbohen raglam haymanit vayizrok Moshe et hadam al hamizbeach savi.
Yeshua, if one went, when Lisa did that amazing trope, that's a shalshelet. It happens 4 times in Torah. So yay, yay, and yay. Okay, come back over.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chaye olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch Ata Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Amen. Yeshua, thank you so much. Thanks. Okay, thanks, sweetheart. Glorious. Woo, baby. As our Torah is out, we have the opportunity to offer a Mishaberach for those in need of healing. And if you turn to page 253, you can join us. And before we even sing together, I look around the room and ask if you'd like to add names for those that perhaps are ill that you're thinking of. Please join us. Misheberach Avotenu Mekor Abracha Limotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach Mikor Abracha Leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. I think we'll put Torah away, Stan, and then we'll do Haftarah. So we've got space for you to be up here. That would be great. I'll ask you to please rise, page 252, and I know, he's looking at me. Herb, my official, oh my God, the Torah is so heavy, but he makes it look like it weighs
But it's
nothing.
it's pretty much right in the
It's
middle.
pretty much in the middle. We call Herb as the honor to lift. Whoa. Vizot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael v'Adonai b'yad Moshe. Yehiram Hayam, Yehiram Hayam, Umelo. Yehiram Hayam, Yehiram Hayam, Yehiram Hayam, Umelo. Please be seated. So as Herb lifted the Torah, and then when he sat down, it bonked me in the top of my nose. And he said, but that's good. That gives you good luck for the day. And I so brilliantly said, really? And he goes, no, that's a bubba mitzvah. I just made it up. So thanks, Herb, for the lift and for the bubba mitzvah of the day. That was perfect. Thank you. So Stan, come on up and you can do the blessings for Haftarah, which can be found on page 254. And Stan is going to be chanting from Jeremiah.
Okay, I'd like to thank Ronnie for teaching me this Haftarah chanting. I'd like to thank my wife for making this kippah. It's the first time I'm wearing it.
If I move away, I'm going to take your mask off so they can
Oh,
hear you.
God. Can you guys hear me? Oh, yeah, I forgot to take it off. I was so excited. And my hearing aid is catching, so just hold on a second. Come on, babe. Okay, here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher bochar b'mdiim tovim v'rotza b'divreihem hanemorim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai Habocher b'Torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'eho emet v'tzedek Ko Omar Adonai Al yitalel chacham bechotmo Ve'al yitalel hagibor bigvuroto Al yitalel ashir be'oshro Ki im bizot Yitalel hamitalel hashkel v'yodoa oti ki ani Adonai oseh chesed mishpat utzedakah ba'aretz ki elech hafatzti ne'um Adonai. Baruch atah Adonai melech Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam tzur kol haolamim tzaddik b'kol hadorot ha'el haneman omer oseh hamidaber kayem shechol divarav emet v'tzedek al haTorah ve'al havodah ve'al hanviim ve'al yom haShabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha ve'limnucha lechavod ultifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umvarchim otach Yitbarach Shimcha Befi Chai Tamid Leolam Voed Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you.
Rob, it's all yours.
Shabbat Shalom. So it's rare that I get to just sit in on Casual Minyan. I feel like I don't get to do this unless I pop in on a summer service usually because of the frequency of B'nai Mitzvahs. So Yesh Koach to everybody. So I know that a big part of the culture of Casual Minyan is to ask a question. I know that we have some people who are on Zoom who can't necessarily hear the question, so normally our MO has been just to give a Devar Torah. But I actually do want to ask a question and give some thoughts, and so we'll pass a mic around and give people a chance to speak. And those who are virtual, you'll be able to see even if, you'll be able to hear even if you can't see. Turn to the sheet that Ronnie made. I'm going to read the English that we have, and then I want to ask a question that really I've struggled with for years, and I have some theories on, but don't really have a great answer for. And I want to see what you have to say, and apologies if I'm stepping on the toes of Torah study this morning, because I actually don't know, Herb, what you covered, so we'll see if it's the same. He brought forward the second ram, the ram of ordination. The context, by the way, is that Aaron is about to become the high priest. His son are about to become the deputy high priests. And so there is a kind of a ritual that we're reading about in this Torah portion, which is making Aaron and elevating him into this level of priesthood. Aaron and his sons laid their hands upon the ram's head, and it was slaughtered. By the way, the "and it was slaughtered" was that shashelet that Lisa chanted before. 4 times in the Torah, every single time it's chanted, it is chanted at moments of deep trepidation. The most famous of them is when Eliezer is sent to go find a wife for Isaac. He's standing on top of a hill. He's looking down onto the town, and he basically makes a deal with God that says, you know what? The first person who's going to give water, not only to me, but to my animals, to my cattle, to my camels, that is going to be the person that I'm going to bring to go marry my master's son. But he's scared as he does it. To God, we have Vayomer. Here, the trepidation is coming with the slaughter of the animal that is about to raise Aaron and his sons up to become the priests. Moses took some of the blood and put it on the ridge of Aaron's right ear, the thumb of his right hand, and the big toe of his right foot. Moses then brought forward the sons of Aaron and put some of the blood on the ridges of their right ears, the thumbs of their right hand, and the big toes of their right feet. And the rest of the blood Moses dashed upon every corner of the altar, every side of the altar. So here's my question. There is one other time, little trivia here, where blood is rubbed on someone's right ear, right thumb, and right toe. Anybody know when that is? I'll give you a clue. We're going to read about it in 2 weeks. When we bring the person with sara'at back into society, that ancient skin disease that we're going to read about in a few weeks, right? They get this skin disease. They have to then go and head into the wilderness for a week, come back, shave their head, and they are then bathed in a certain kind of blood, of which blood is rubbed on their right ear, right thumb, and right toe. That then is the ritual in which the mitzora, that's the noun, is brought back into society. Now it's interesting because it's a strange ritual, right? Why only the right side? Why the ear, the thumb, the big toe? What's the significance of all of that? By the way, did we talk about this morning? Okay. So I have struggled, and I've got some theories and teachings about it, but I want to see what we come up with. And if you're joining us virtually, feel free to raise your hand. I'll call on you too, and you can give some thoughts too. But why do you think, what is the connection between this being the ritual in which to elevate the high priest and this being the ritual in which to bring the person who has this ancient skin disease called sara'at back into society? What is the connection between those two things? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's, not just because we're in this sort of right now, but I think it has to do with inoculating the high priests, who are going to be the ones who inoculate like the people with the disease so they can come back in the community.
Oh,
It's
wow.
It's like a vaccine.
So even though the high priest has 50 other things that they need to do, they know that one of the main things that they have to do is to bring this person back in. And so in the moment when they get elevated, they're reminded about that task and inoculated against whatever that sara'at is that they're going to bring back. I love that. And I wonder if you would have answered that question 2 years ago the same way. That's very cool. Yeah. Stan.
Well, I think it's like a purging of the not necessarily evil spirit, but anything that is impure about the Kohen, about Aaron, has to be taken out. And I think this is a way to take that impurity out so that he can go ahead and be the Kohen HaGadol, the high priest.
So that,
Hang on a second.
yeah.
And the same thing happens with the person who has leprosy. You want to get rid of the impurity that is causing them to be that way.
Amazing. So that the kind of the blood is an ancient way to purify. Right. You get down that line and suddenly you're pure, and it's almost irrelevant whether you're the priest or whether you're the person coming in. You want the priest to enter priesthood in purity. You want the person who was impure from this skin disease to enter into the camp in purity too. It almost a kind of a democratizing act, like it doesn't matter who you are. Yom Kippur comes around every year, Ne'ilah happens, and everyone has that kind of clean feeling on their soul heading into the year, whatever that looks like. Yeah.
So I think back to making it a sign. So like when the angel of death comes, we use the blood on the doorpost and we make a sign that says, it's holy in here. And then when the priest has this ceremony, it's in front of everybody. And it's a sign in front of everyone that he is the Holy One who is going to enter that dangerous space of the Holy of Holies. He's the only one who gets to do that. So it's a sign for him and a mark for the community. And then when we look at the person who's been sent out of the community, we need a sign to show that they're okay, because not everyone will count the days. Not everyone will know that he's cleared to come back or she's cleared to come back. And I think the mark is a sign that signals to the community, you can welcome this person back into your space.
Very cool. So
Can
what
I
you're
ask a
saying
quick
here
question?
is what you're saying. Well, let me just
Go
kind
ahead.
of riff off what Lisa's saying for a second, which is it's less about the priest and the Mitzorah and more about the way the community observes them. And so this ritual is for the community to see each of these different pieces. Yeah.
So my question is, why the right side? And what quickly popped in my mind was when one gets married, the ring goes on your right finger, and is there the storyline that supposedly has a connection to your heart? So why the right side?
Interesting. Well, so look, right has always been the more holy of the sides than the left, right? If you know, like the word sinister in English actually comes from the root left-handed. Yeah, and so left has always been kind of a weird thing, and in Judaism, that to use Herb's word, Boba Misa, that is in part like a part of the theology of Judaism too. Right has always been stronger than left, right? When we talk about God, for example, helping us, we literally say yamino, right? God's right hand is going to be helping us. So that's a piece of it. And by the way, not here, right? Because if a priest is missing a digit, if the priest is missing a right thumb or a right toe, the priest can't be the priest. That appears in Parshat Emor like very, very clearly. But there is a huge discussion, Talmudic discussion, about what do you do if somebody gets this skin disease, sara'at, and they're missing their right thumb, right? Can they ever be purified again? And you find, by the way, that there are like 3 different answers to that question, or missing a right ear or something. One answer is you put it where the stump is, right? One answer is you use the left as the alternative. So he doesn't have a right thumb, but you use the left thumb, or use the closest digit to it, right? And the third, there is an argument, Talmudic argument, that perhaps that person will never be able to be brought into the camp because they're missing the avenue. And I once gave a sermon actually in rabbinical school about that idea and used it as a metaphor for the fact that, look, when we're trying to make a will or a way out of, when you're trying to make a way halachically, when it's actually quite difficult to do, you do actually have alternatives and different people have approaches, right? Legal positivism basically says, no, it's the law or nothing, right? That's you can never be brought back. Then there's the legal fiction, right? We're just going to kind of pretend that it's there. And then you've got what I think is kind of like the reform way of seeing law, which is if A doesn't work, but B kind of feels like the same spirit, go with B. And so it's got this whole issue of the right piece of the right digits actually has an interesting history. Herb.
If that's how you feel, then how come in the liturgy, when you do regular Saturday morning services, to have that part where if any orifice were blocked, we wouldn't be able to stand before you, which is exactly, it says anybody who has any disability can't do it.
So what I think that's just saying is our bodies are a perfectly fashioned system. Stand before you, I think, is a metaphor for dying. So if your artery were to close up or something that should be open, I don't know, your windpipe were to close up or something like that, we would die. That's, I think, what it means. We wouldn't be able to stand before you. Yeah, it's a metaphor. I mean, that's always used as a metaphor. Yeah.
It's objectionable, but it's really actually, the rabbis interpret it, it's really about your intestines and a blockage there, which is going to prevent you because of when we traditionally say it. So I think in some sense it's literal, but in other sense it's figurative.
Yeah.
Well, I keep thinking about, blood is kind of disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's long on your outsides. And I'm just I'm sort of half playing with that this is just another thing where we're going, showing that we're outside the ordinary way of doing things. And that they're using the sacrificial animal, but I just keep feeling like there's something so off-putting about it. I mean, it's not like maybe it's just because I'm in the 21st century, but the idea that, blood being splashed on somebody seems like the most horrible thing. And so I feel like this is just part of how we invert certain things to make them holy.
That's very interesting.
And I'm thinking about, because I did the discussion last week, Vayikra, and the order of the rituals for the various sacrifices with the blood. Well, in this portion, it says you're not supposed to eat the blood, except perhaps in some other circumstance. And in Vayikra, all these sacrifices, the blood is splashed around the altar. The blood kind of belongs to God along with the fat and I guess the protuberance on the kidney or whatever they're always talking about in Vayikra.
Good. Let's take one more. We'll go to Stan, and then I'll give some closing thoughts on this.
Okay, so if man was created in God's image, and there are so many men and women who are, let's say, compromised when they're born. So that means that maybe God's compromised too. If he could create, or she or it or the higher power can create something that's imperfect, does that imply that God's imperfect, and therefore should somebody who doesn't have a digit and is imperfect be punished for that imperfection if he's created in God's image?
So you're bringing up a bunch of interesting arguments, one of which is the question of how are we created in God's image and we're all different. There is a very famous midrash that appears that basically talks about how amazing it is that, there's the image of the emperor that you stamp on coins, and every time you stamp that coin is exactly the same as every other coin. That's part of the reason that currency works, right? But then they use the metaphor, but God has a stamp called the image of God, which is stamped on every person, and we're all unique as opposed to the coin. So you're bringing that as a really interesting, important thing. And look, and it's funny, you never know what people are gonna think about with abortion. For me, it was the connection between the two. But I mean, immediately I noticed that our antennas went up when I mentioned that, like, Parshat Emor does not allow for the priest to have any kind of defect, and that the rabbis struggle with whether or not someone with mitzora, someone with surah, with that skin disease, can ever come back in if they're missing the digit. It's challenging for us. And actually, if you come to Parshat Emor, which is in a number of weeks, it's like Leviticus low 20s. The student who's doing that is actually wrestling with the very question of, is it fair, and why would it be the case that a priest would not be able to have any kind of deformity in order to, like every student who ever is written a Devar Torah on that topic will, as I push them, give one or two potential reasons, but then we'll reject it and we'll say, like, you know what, like, we need to embrace people with disabilities. The Torah is just wrong here. And you are allowed to wrestle with it and find a rationale, right? The rationale that Rashi gives, for example, to that is the idea that packages matter, and that in, at least in the ancient world, right, it's not only that finding the choicest meat to bring to God, but finding the choicest meat in the choicest packaging. And the packaging is the priest conveying the meat to God matters the most, right? Almost universally, everyone who ever hears that still rejects it, but it's important always to ask, what's the reason first? Then feel free to reject it afterwards and say, it's still discriminatory, I'm not okay with it. Well, Ronnie, and then I'll give a closing thought.
The continuity that I see that you just said, the stamp of the coin and the stamp of God by all of us being stamped, even though we look differently, is the blood and the force of life that is flowing through blood. So, and the way Mart said it, in fact, that blood is disgusting. I mean, we look at it as if AIDS, et cetera, you don't want to pass it around, don't want to have blood out. But if that blood flow was not there, we would not be flowing.
Yeah, it's funny. I see Ayelet is on right now. I'm not going to call her out, but
But we could call out Lev.
Yeah, but hi Lev, hey Molly.
Lev.
But one day, you know, I imagine that she has a very interesting relationship to blood in a different way than any of us do, because she's like a hem-onc specialist. So she lives her life thinking about blood and the role that blood plays and what does healthy blood look like. And so maybe when we do like Tazria Mitzora or something like that, we'll bring her on to speak, unless she wants to pop on right now and say something. All right.
She goes, no way.
So, a closing thought. When I have been wrestling with this parallel between the Mitzora and the priest, I was thinking about who's it for. And for a little while, I always thought that maybe it was for the Mitzora, right? The Mitzora is being brought in so they can feel at a point when they feel the lowest, right? They were just cast out because they were because they had this skin disease, that they too are, in the words of God, part of the kingdom of priests and holy people, right? But I actually wonder whether it's the other way around too. That part of being the priest, part of being a healer, part of being a leader, is being able to understand what other people are going through. And although the commandment about how to bring the Mitzora back into the community appears in a couple weeks, I ascribe to the idea of like ein mukdam ve'ein meuchar v'Torah, that sometimes the Torah is like a little bit out of order, right? And I can't imagine a world where Aaron would be elevated to become the priest without having gone to like priest school, right? Without God having said to him, like, here's all the things to expect, which means that like when he went to his class on how to bring in the Mitzora into the community, like that must have imprinted itself on him, so that when Moses conveys this blood and starts rubbing on him, he thinks about the lowest in society at the moment when he is elevated highest. And that's really important, right? There's this really powerful teaching in a text that I return to a lot, actually, about Rabban Gamliel. Now, Rabban Gamliel was the chief rabbinic authority of his time. And he was particularly mean to one student. His name was Rabbi Joshua, Rabbi Yehoshua in Hebrew. And Gamliel one day was so mean to him, after being mean for a number of times, that he was basically deposed. And they brought in a new leader, Elazar ben Azariah, who becomes kind of the head of the academy. And Gamliel realizes that if he wants to get his job back, he has to go back to Yehoshua, and he has to find out kind of what Yehoshua is up to, ask his forgiveness, and eventually gain that seat again. So he goes to Yehoshua, and he notices that the walls of Yehoshua's house are completely black, because Yehoshua is a smelter. And that smoke from the smelting has basically stained his walls, probably stained his lungs, right? And he says to him, I didn't know you live this way. And Yehoshua looks at him and says to him, and I think this is the most powerful part of this whole like 2-page story. It's in Tractate Brachot, which I know some of us have studied. And Yehoshua looks at Gamliel and says, woe to your generation who has you as a leader, who doesn't even know how his disciples struggle to live. And at that point, Gamliel's heart like breaks open. He apologizes, and he ends up getting his post back. But that's significant, right? The moment of elevation, you have to know who that every man is. And that's, by the way, the reason that I think that like people want to, quote, grab a beer with their president of the United States, right? For George Bush, that was the biggest refrain that you heard. Why was George Bush chosen? For probably other reasons too, but the most vocal reason that people would say, if you remember back to the 2000 election, is that people would have, quote, rather grabbed a beer with George Bush than with Al Gore. And so people want their leaders to understand them. They want them to know them. And that's so incredibly important, that a leader who isn't engendered with that is going to miss the opportunity and not know how to reach out to those who are struggling the most, which is, I think, why he was elevated. And so I'll end with a quick story. There's a folk tale about a little boy who ends up being chosen because of some random reason. They kind of unleash a bird, and the bird flies and lands on the boy's shoulder, and he's chosen to be the next king. Now, this boy was in tatters when he's chosen to be the king. He's incredibly poor. And so his first act as a king is to ask that a little shack be built, a little kind of shed be built outside the castle. And every day the kid used to go out into the castle, out of the castle, into the shed, and a couple minutes later he would come out. Nobody ever knew what he did because there were no windows. So one day someone snuck in to actually find out. And what do they see? They see that the little boy comes, takes off his priestly robes or his kingly robes, puts back on the clothes he was wearing on the day when the bird landed on his shoulder. He gazes in the mirror for a few minutes, takes those off, puts back on his crown and robes, and leaves again. Turns out that the boy ended up, in the folktale, being the greatest king the kingdom had ever known, because he made a point not to forget where he came from, which meant that he cared not only for the power that was imbued to him, but also for the station from which he left, which the majority of his kingdom are. And I imagine that that's part of what goes in to why it is that we put the blood on these 3 digits of the priest. Shabbat shalom. Sure.
We rise as we put Torah in the ark to page 256. Wait, why are you taking that off? He was going back to where we were, just going back to where it was. It's okay. Yalalu et Shem Adonai, ki nizkav shemo levado, odol haaretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren le'amo, tehila lechol chasidav, lifnei Yisrael am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. It's Chaim hi lemachazib kiba v'tom checha meushar derachecha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha Shalom, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Remain standing. We turn to page 282 for Aleinu. Cool. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshid, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vigor aleinu kechol hamonam, vanachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo Ushemo Echad.
We're seated together. We pause for a moment as we think of those that we've loved and who we've lost, As I call each category of mourning, I'll invite you to rise and share the name of your loved one for whom you're thinking. If you're in Shiva, the first 7 days of mourning, I'll invite you to rise. If you're in Shana, the first year of mourning, I'll invite you to rise. If you're in Shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning, I'll invite you to rise. If you are thinking of a friend that you want to say any words of remembrance for, whether they died in recent days or within this past year, I'll invite you to rise and share their name. And if you're observing a yard site, the anniversary of a loved one's death, I'll invite you to rise. We turn together to page 294 as we rise together. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach yiratei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachon v'yomachon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, b'hagala u'vizman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehi shmai Rabbah v'rach le'olam olamei omaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei kudasha barechu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, tamiram b'yama v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama Rama min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al Yisrael v'yimru amen. Ose shalom b'mamav, huya asa shalom, aleinu ve'al Yisrael v'yimru. Please be seated.
Just a couple of really quick announcements because there is so much going on. I mean, Purim's not over yet. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, no, it's not. Tonight is the Purim Spiel at 7 o'clock p.m. Expected to have a full house. You know, can I say more about the Purim Spiel? No. But it's one of the favorite things that people absolutely in this congregation love, love, love to not only be a part of, but to come and watch and see it. So join us tonight. And the only other announcement that I will make is, oh, it is? Oh, good. So if you're not coming, go on YouTube and you'll see it. But the other thing is, if you're going to sign up for our Women's Seder, hurry up, come on. I made the announcement last night. It is one of the fastest sign-ups that I've seen happen. As soon as the email went out, immediately, there's like 30 women already. Like, it was so fast, I was like, what congregation is this? That doesn't happen that quickly. So it's not the cutoff by any means yet. It's a wonderful evening. It's April 7th. It is at 7 p.m. There will be a Seder. There will be dinner afterwards. If you're uncomfortable being with food and other humans, but you want to be a part of the Seder, we'll also have it on Zoom. So please sign up and join us. Other than that, Rob, do you have any announcements you want to make?
Second night Seder is back. You want to join that? But other than that, just read your emails.
Yeah, so many emails to go. So, on that note, we will close with Kiyesh Me'erat Shabbat, which is on page 330. Kiyesh Me'erat Shabbat, El Yishmereini. Kiyesh Me'erat Shabbat, El Yishmereini. Shmerat Shabbat, El Yishmereini. Ki Shmerat Shabbat, El Yishmereini. Oti le'omeyat ume'uveni. Oti le'omeyat ve'no'uveni. I know we're doing food in the synagogue, but we don't have a lunch today. But if you're on your way to lunch, let's totally close out with page 300, Vishamru, and you can do your Kiddush and Motzi elsewhere when you get near your food. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat Lidoratam berit olam Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat Lidoratam berit olam Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti leolam, oti leolam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, lasot et ha-Shabbat, ledoratam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim, asa Adonai, et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lasot et ha-Shabbat lidoratam berit olam uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash Shavat vayinafash Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lasot et ha-Shabbat lidoratam berit olam. Shabbat shalom to those that are on Zoom, on YouTube. Shabbat shalom to everyone that's here. Thank you for being with